You did do some cartography for the Red Cross.
Hmm.
So do you want to
Yeah.
talk about that?
Yeah. That's another pretty easy thing that people can get involved with. Not a lot of overhead to just get started. I believe you can just go to HOT, or it's the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, I think.
Hmm.
Um, and basically whatever project they need. So if it's resource or medication delivery in third world countries or just less developed nations, or disaster response, something that touched home for me was my mom actually lives in Oregon, and 2 years ago, I believe, they actually had to be evacuated due to the wildfires. Um, and that's something that you can volunteer with this HOT program, and you can digitize roads, buildings from satellite imagery that may not be currently updated, or what have you. If somebody has a shed or something that just isn't in the parcel fabric that the disaster response teams are using, the American Red Cross and other associations can use HOTS network to get these open source digitized maps and go try to help or render aid to like buildings that may be in danger of like wildfire or natural disaster, what have you. Yeah, that's a really cool program. I recommend anybody who has some free time and can give back and is interested in the GIS world, that's something you put on your resume.
So you do have some experience with remote sensing and using satellite data, for instance, like your research on the Eagle Creek fire
Mm-hmm.
and the Mark O. Hatfield Wilderness in the Bull Run watershed. I thought that was pretty interesting. Can you go into that?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that one hits home too. And that was probably just my favorite research project I ever did in school. Um, Yeah, so crazy story for those who are unfamiliar. I think this was in 2017. An individual was lighting off fireworks in the Eagle Creek wilderness, and these ravines are just it's they say really the only place that's analogous in the world to it is like the Scandinavian fjords. There's just so many waterfalls, and it feeds the Columbia River watershed. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful place to go hiking and recreate, backpack, what have you. One of the coolest trails I've ever done in my entire life is called Moonra Point. It's a little remote. It's a little backcountry. If you're not ready for it, it might intimidate some folks, but especially now because it's been pretty destroyed through the wildfires. So anyways, yeah, in 2017, due to human negligence, that whole area was lit up, and it also happened to be a particularly dry year, so that was part of it, why it caught on so quickly and so devastatingly. um, so through the remote sensing course with the University of Arizona, we were taught the technique of normalized difference in vegetation index. And so what you can do is take the infrared and near infrared bands of spectral imagery and satellite imagery, and you can basically detect how much green is on the ground. And because there's a historical catalog, I can look at imagery that is relatively cloud free from prior to the fire, and then take the most recent imagery and overlay the two. And with raster calculations, you can see the difference in those green bands and the near infrared and infrared bands to determine how much growth is coming back, and how devastated the area still is. Um, and tangentially, looking at other research that's been done from Portland State University, uh, what they're finding is that landscape is just really susceptible now to landslides, mudslides, what have you, because there is no longer an abundance of root structure in the ground. And it's an incredibly steep hillside in this area. If you've ever driven out there or seen it, you would know that without all those trees, without all that vegetation to hold that landside or that landscape intact, any remote storm that comes through can start to quickly erode and wash it away. And actually, I believe at least 2 people have died from landslides and mudslides in that area since 2017, because storms will come through and just kind of wash it out. And the highway runs right along the Columbia River, and you just never know when it's going to happen, and it can happen to anybody. So it's really unfortunate what's happened in that area. And so my recommendation, not that I was presenting it to anybody, but just hypothetically, my recommendation is to keep that area that was so severely burned closed to further recreation for really the foreseeable future, because people just don't understand that it's already been so destroyed. And if we continue to go out, and if it's just me, I think I'm not causing that much damage just by hiking through. But if it's me and 100 other people behind me on the same day, and then tomorrow and the next day, that starts to compound, and we're continually eroding this landscape that has already just not recovered. Yeah, in a nutshell, that's my work on the Eagle Creek wildfire.
Yeah, and I read that, and I think that work was incredible. And I think when you guys use Landsat 8 to use that for your satellite imagery and just the analysis and the statistics that you used to come up with that conclusion that you had just said, I thought that was really cool.
And if I can say one more thing to your
Yeah.
point about Illustrator, a lot of the figures and the graphics I put together, I really tried to be creative with it and use Illustrator to the best of my abilities, and kind of almost show like puzzle pieces, if you will, of like, this is what it looks like, with this band of multispectral imagery
Mhm.
coupled with this one, and so on and so forth. So yeah, again, another really cool application of Illustrator with GIS.